Hi, everybody. It feels like it's been a while, and so it almost feels like I should start with, I'm back. So 2020 has been quite a year. I've had videos and newsletters that were queued to launch to you, but when COVID hit, we all kind of transformed to living in the moment. And anything that was pre-scheduled or pre-planned essentially became useless, right? Irrelevant. And so just like everything else in our world, I shut down, I quarantined, and my newsletters and communication outwardly shut down as well. And I did what I do best, right, in the doctor world, which is I shifted into crisis care. So I was in Boston for that 3.5-month period. Now I'm in Aspen, and I just decided that it was time to start reconnecting. And what I was doing during this time that I was addressing crisis care was giving webinars on how you navigate stress and anxiety. What do we do when there's chronic uncertainty? I created some free healing circles, which were for various different groups. And alongside that, some calls started coming in from parents and from youth. They're inconsolable children who had been sent home, from school, whether it was from college or other schools, and they were feeling hopeless, powerless, and like they just couldn't make a difference in the world. And they didn't know when it was going to end. So we ended up working, collaborating and creating something called Next Gen Are the New World. And it was a conference to not only educate them on how to handle their anxiety and their loss, right, but we were able to then connect them to their passions, whether it's the earth or anxiety and all things health, whatever they were interested in. We then connected them to turn that despair into hope and action. So that was one of the most meaningful things that I've been doing during this time. So since it's been a little while, I guess I should start with, how are you? Our world has changed so radically over the last few months that I even experienced that simple question differently than I did before. So how are you would be like a pleasantry. It'd be something that I'd expect without thought. You would answer with, fine, how are you? Right? An easy way to get into a conversation without much thought. Except fine is not the answer right now. I'm not fine. We are not fine. And the world is not fine yet. In fact, on a recent webinar during Q&A, someone wanted to know how on earth she could have spent several decades of her life considering herself steady, stable, kind of a rock, but during the last few months experienced such highs and lows merely by seeing something move across her phone, a headline move across her phone. So she was saying, I'm steady, I'm clear. That's how I've always thought of myself and known myself, except now I can be in tears or I can be absolutely elated in a moment's notice. I don't like this. What's wrong with me? So I went on to assure her that she's exactly where she's supposed to be, because every single one of us, or nearly all of us, are buckled into this emotional roller coaster that's created one of the most intense experiences of our entire lives. I believe this is due to the unparalleled amount and pace of change that has now resulted in anxiety, stress, uncertainty, the inability to, be able to control what's happening to us. So we used to say, our whole world is upside down, but let's just start with a few things. We used to say, if you can't see it, you can't measure it, it doesn't exist. How many times in business did you hear that? As a way of really saying that if something's invisible and it can't easily be quantified or measured, it must be irrelevant. It doesn't matter. But now our world is different, because just because you can't see a virus, does it exist? And the virus doesn't need a passport to get in, and it doesn't really care about a wall that we're building. And in addition to this, let's bring that home. We used to say that emotions, right, didn't matter. Keep home at home and work at work. Well, now home is work. And so on this emotional roller coaster that we're on, even though you can't see it and it's invisible, do emotions matter? I'd argue that they are driving everything in our world right now. So it's definitely a telling time, and one that has revealed how people respond when they're in chaos and the unknown for a prolonged period of time. Now, you might, just by looking around you, decide how other people are reacting. It might be easier to look there first. You might notice some people just start to blame other people. Other people start to make up stories to make sense of the uncertainty and get themselves out of it. Other people hope that if they just endure this, one day we will emerge on the other side of this experience, this pandemic, this social unrest, this economic disruption, all of the things that are going on. They're hoping that if they just endure this, everything will once again return to our new normal or normal. And once again, they can say, I'm fine. But if you think about it, actually all the old rules, societal norms, and institutions that no longer serve us are crumbling. And some people are going to go into extra overdrive to try and hold all of those crumbling pieces. They're going to try and push them all back up, right? But nothing is really the way that we thought it was. So how about before all of this, if you wanted to be safe, you would come inside and lock the doors. But now, if you want to feel safe during a respiratory-borne illness, you say, I'll meet you outside just to be safe, so the air can circulate and there's less of a chance of transmission. Whoever knew that we would think that loving someone meant not seeing them or not attending their funeral or not hugging them? Yet today, that is our reality. So there was one other webcast that I did during this time where someone said, don't you think it's horrible that the president's saying something different than the governors are saying, that is saying something different than the mayors? I mean, listen, yes, I would prefer that we had some clear, unified, central leadership and direction. But when the leaders in our world provide clear structure and communication, while it's easier, we then get to revert to autopilot and allow other people to be in charge of what's happening. So do I wish it was different? Yeah, I think that would be great. But do I think it's horrible that everybody's pointing in different directions? No, because I thought for a moment and I thought, well, it just means we're going to learn a different lesson than we thought. So it's not necessarily. I think chaos does create delays in our healing, but there's benefits to this path as well, this alternate path that we're taking. What if, for the first time in a really long time, each one of us is being asked not to default to what we're told to do, but to look within ourselves and discover what we truly value. And not only what we value, but in what order we value it. So let's say you value health, freedom, and money. Let's say security, right? Now you get to decide in what order you value that. And we also need to figure out as a global community, right? Not just us, but our families and our communities and our country and our world. How do we value this and how are we going to coordinate this in order to stay connected? So it takes a lot more effort to do it this way, but it sounds like it's the path we're taking, so I'm going to say that it must be necessary for us to learn this lesson. So the best way that I know how to describe what we're all going through right now is a world heart attack. So to relate this to my world with patients, I'd say that a heart attack, a stroke, a pneumonia, cancer, a medical diagnosis was one of the fastest tracks to spirituality. So an individual went from, I am not spiritual or religious, I do not want the chaplain coming in, to their palms together praying for hope, talking about faith and recovery. Doc, do you think I'll make it? So when their world was turned upside down with an unexpected event, they felt shocked. And once they made it through that period, because their first focus is on healing physically, and I would say that that's important for our world as well. We have to heal on a physical level, experiencing this. If you are not actually in COVID, an experience of having COVID yourself, that provides us with an opportunity for a sacred moment. And I use this with my patients. Once they were stabilized physically, I would ask them some questions about what mattered to them. And together we got to ponder some of life's big questions that we never have time for. And what they prioritized and what mattered to them became crystal clear. And that was the gift. And so I ask you, as our world feels like it's in this moment, right? This collective heart attack, this global event that suddenly illuminated countless blind spots, one of which is that we're so different from one another. And what we see is how separate we are, that it has actually shown us that no matter how far apart we are geographically, how different we appear in our physicality or our preferences, right? How many ways we can divide ourselves politically and otherwise. The truth is, we've got a lot in common, and we are one connected system. So for so long, so many of us have been saying, we want change, we think change is a good idea, we just need change. I think what we're realizing is that embracing the discomfort of change and wanting change are two very different experiences. So I'm convinced that lots of people want change, but here's the caveat. They also want to control what change happens and the pace at which it happens. And that's not something that can happen right now. Right now, we have to value control, our own control, as much as we value surrender and letting go. And so that's the question for you, right? How good are you at wanting to control things? And how good are you at letting go when you can't? So left unchecked, we were a world, on this ever-quickening treadmill to do more and more in less time, to act as if we could defy our own biological rhythms, right? But while technology connected us to each other, we were increasingly becoming more isolated, anxious, depressed, suicidal. As those numbers rose, it was clear that we had forgotten about our deep connections to ourselves, to each other, to the planet, to the world, and really to what matters most to us. So this feels like almost like Mother Nature has placed us in this global timeout. And when I think of that, I'm actually reminded of my little nephew and this sweatshirt that he has that says straight out of timeout. Now, he does some mischievous things to get in there. But right now it seems like, the bigger question here is, what will we do with this timeout? What you do during that timeout is what either makes the timeout useful or not, even for him. If he just is mad at his parents and he doesn't think about what he just did, how useful is that? So will you merely endure this experience, this global timeout? Will you use it as sacred time to reflect on who you are and who we are with one another? Will you use this to get clear and be the change that you've been waiting for? Or will you decide it's just too much work and revert back to the old and familiar ways that might have even been dysfunctional and you didn't like, and that you said no longer served you? So for some of us, this slowing down has been a welcome relief and a much more manageable pace. Maybe we've gotten to slow down and connect to family. For others, perhaps those who thrive on activity and accomplishing, slowing down may have been hard. To be confined to your home and feel uncomfortable and it's stifling, right? Or if you're hearing that work isn't, no one's going back to work until sometime in 2021 now, how you're feeling inside. But those of you that are big doers, the reason you're feeling uncomfortable, I would bet, is because now instead of doing and thinking, this slower pace that you've been in actually has allowed emotions to arise, and that means you might have to feel. And in the feelings, in the emotions, if you're not comfortable with them, they're uncomfortable sensations, and they lead to you feeling vulnerable and not in control. So this comes back to the idea around balancing out our ability to be in control and also allowing ourselves to let go and experience. So when this happens, we have a choice. You can either kick into high gear, work really hard, and attempt to hold back up all these crumbling norms and societal rules and institutions, or you can surrender to the next state of our world and begin collaboratively building what's next. So the problem isn't the slowing down, right? We've needed that for a while. Our nervous systems are going to love it. Our meals are going to digest better. We're going to sleep. We aren't going to have meetings and travel and traffic. Our bodies are going to thank us. What I think the much bigger problem is that when we move at this slower pace, noticing what comes up for us, the misalignment in us, the things that were bothering us, but we could kind of ignore them because we just stayed busy, those things are going to pop up. And I think the problem with slowing down is us not having any idea what to do with what surfaces. And if you're wondering what I mean is in half a century that couples have been married, they've never spent this much consecutive time together. Other people are telling me, I realize that I'm in a job instead of pursuing what really matters. So some people are actually grateful to have a job, right? So it depends on where you are, right? But many people are at this, like they've lost their life routines, their coping mechanisms, and now they're permanently disrupted. You know, their lives feel permanently disrupted and they don't know the path forward. So the way I think of this is we're in the middle of a complete renovation, not of our kitchen, but of life as we know it. And will we merely endure this traumatic time by binging Netflix, eating and drinking our way through it, and hoping that life will be fine on the other side? Or are we going to use this to slow down and reflect and get really clear on a few questions? So I'm going to give you a few of them right now. How happy am I with how I'm living? How aligned am I? How am I loving? Do I feel like I am loved, and do I feel like I love other people well? Am I in a job? Or if I've lost my job, am I ready to get another one? Or could I see if there's a moment for me to reflect and align on how I can not only live my life's purpose, but also make a living? So there's lots of questions coming up, right? And what I want to know, just to make things sane, I try to remember that visual of my little nephew's sweatshirt with straight out of timeout. And as I do, it makes my heart warm a little and I smile, because just seeing his smile woke me out of my days and got me thinking about how I might shift into healing me in order to serve the collective we and create a better world for him. So in the chaos of the pandemic, a dear friend, Elise, and I have decided to serve in a new way. And during one of our conversations, we decided that we didn't just want to be fine anymore. We wanted to be alive, living in a new and excited way for the future that's coming. And so we wanted to use this crisis to heal ourselves and help each other. And so if you're ready to reimagine, re-engineer, and reinvent this world heart attack, and use it as an opportunity to educate yourself, expand your perspective, and create an authentic community so that together we can elevate the world, please join us. Join us at the Virtual Conscious Community Cafe, CC Cafe online. So yes, it's like 3 C's in a row. So Conscious Community Cafe, cccafe.online. So what it is it's this free monthly online interactive group experience that's designed to be an exchange. We want to meet you exactly where you are. We want to help you by listening, providing a space of trust and safety, giving you powerful tools to expand and elevate your consciousness, and then empower you into action in your life. So please join us and just answer the question before you get there. What's on your hearts and minds? How can we support you? And most importantly, how will you react, behave? What will you do in this sacred moment we've been giving?